monoliths of rusted iron that tower above us, the hazy landscapes thick with the smell of coal dust and slow decay, the feeling of dread, a crushing weight upon our sunken chests and broken backs, the cracks in each step of the sidewalk looking up at us like a shattered mirror. We can barely make out our own images gazing up from the concrete. Thus, we choose to draw our reflection from what we see around us. We see ourselves in the chugging turbines, the buzzing high-tension wires, the boards of rotten plywood hastily nailed over broken windows, the bleak, dirty gray of the sky, lake, buildings, and streets surrounding us. So we react. We let people know what we see. We do this by any means at our disposal, through the very way we earn our livings. Through scrap metal, electronics, computers, we use these tools to express the anger, misery, and disease wrought upon us by industrial society. We commiserate through public acts of ritual grieving, an exhibition of blood and oil-streaked canvases. We embody the crumbling metropolis around us through our folk art. We escape our chains by strangling ourselves with them further. We see ourselves in the dirty reflection of our society, and then we refract it back upon the world. We call this home, and we call this art.
About 1992, a really good friend of mine, Dwid. Yeah. Dwid is the singer of the legendary hardcore Cleveland band Integrity. Him and I were talking one time, and he's like, "What is that stuff that you always play?" And I'm like, "Oh, power tool nonsense and stuff." There's a band called Man is the Bastard, friends of mine. You know who they are. They always incorporated that kind of stuff, but I never knew how they did it. It sounded to me like vacuum cleaners and power tools. And so I was always a blue-collar kid. I decided I'm going to start making music using power tools. I really never even heard of industrial music. I heard of Nurse with Wound, who are the greatest band in the world. That's kind of what they sound like. And excuse me. And I was like, I'm going to try to do something with that. It wasn't until later in like 93, 94 that I actually started to record that stuff.
After I got kicked out of my death metal band, that's when I started Season of Discontent with Mike Duncan and Patrick Beck, who is no longer with us, unfortunately.
Well, I started late 80s, early 90s, getting into some of the more traditional industrial music, like Skinny Puppy, things of that nature. Some underground death metal type stuff. From there, I became more influenced in, things of a more experimental nature. Stuff like Megaptura, Brighter Death Now, Cold Meat bands, Slaughter Production bands. It's just, the grimier industrial that didn't have the same dance music feel to it as bands like Skinny Puppy.
I traded a Goat Lord CD to Pat Beck, and he gave me some Black Mayonnaise, and I was blown away from it. One of my favorites ever since.
I would say definitely the first time I heard any type of music that could be considered industrial would have been Old Ministry and Big Black from some older guys in high school. And from that, I found out about Godflesh at some point. I think I was maybe in 9th grade. And so pretty much Godflesh and Big Black is what really got me into drum machines and using drum machines.
In the early 1990s, Cleveland's underground music scene established a DIY venue named Speak in Tongues. The building, situated on the west side of town, quickly became a nexus point in the industrial scene, attracting the attention of touring acts and allowing many local acts to develop their craft. Many of these acts are still active today.
Back in the early 90s, there was a really cool spot called Speak in Tongues. It was a collective, myself, Ralf Hausman, who's in the family chapter with me, who's the sound man extraordinaire, decided I'm going to risk life and limb and property value and do this spot. And we'll have a bunch of hardcore bands play here. We'll have weird, noisy bands play here. We'll have everything. And it was amazing.
Speaking Tongues was dirty, it was scuzzy, it was, you walked in, you got a herpy on you, you know. But it was a place where we can go, and it was a place that let us play whatever we wanted to do, and there were no rules there. And, you know, thank God for that, because, you know, without that, we wouldn't have the scene it is today. And it was a very important place, you know.
Standing outside one of the best venues known to man, known as Speaking Tongues. It's closed now, of course, because that's how things go.
Closed about 10 years ago, in 2001, New Year's, 2001, so 9 years.
9 years?
We were here from about 93 to 2001. Did shows on the top floor first, called Funjars, and then the Pieta.
Everybody.
And then around 90, first year, so, and then around 94, we started doing shows downstairs, Speaking Tongues.
Speaking Tongues, God rest your soul, was not just a place. Yeah, it was a hole in the wall. Yeah, it was a dive. There was a whole subculture that festered there.
That whole scene with Speaking Tongues, I would say, was very important to this city as a whole. And Ralph's work with what he did with that venue, I'd say is definitely defining. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but Ralph's work was definitely extremely significant, in my opinion.
Things at Speak in Tongues were definitely a feeling of anything goes, from the standpoint of performance and the standpoint of personal substance intake. People generally did whatever they wanted. If that meant, you know, physical injury to themselves or bystanders, you know, it was anything goes. It wasn't uncommon to be running from a performer so you didn't get any personal injury to yourself, only to go into the next room and see people doing cocaine off the bar, you know, in plain view.
I actually booked the Haters here once, and it was supposed to be a nighttime show
Someone else booked the show.
that night, so we ended up doing it in the middle of the day, and it actually turned out to be one of my favorite shows
Because there was some punk show here.
yeah, punk
at
show,
night,
so
yeah.
people showed up.
As always.
And Ralph had the sound so loud, there was a piece of debris, like paper on the ground, that was literally moving, that was so loud, and all I saw were all these indie rock kids going,
Right.
it's too loud. And there's this big dude with fire tattoos and a wrestling mask on with one eye making all this go on. And it was just amazing. It was one of the coolest things. And I think of course, that's when I started lighting fires in clubs, and they didn't get that at all. And there was one show that we did here as Lockwell and the Eugenics Council. We kind of teamed up.
Oh, with the bomb.
The bomb.
Yeah,
that I know nothing about.
I remember that.
Yeah, not everyone liked the bomb,
The
so you
chain-
got a little bit of trouble there.
I got into trouble for a chainsaw.
I don't know. It was like, you
I
know,
trampled
the punks
food
didn't
from
like the
products.
indie rock guys, and the indie rock guys didn't like the noise show, so I was always kind of like,
Ralph was in the middle of that.
yeah, but it was cool. I mean, I kind of wanted to leave it open to everything and not really tell someone they can't do something, you know. So that was important. You know.
I'm not quite sure exactly what happened to have the place meet its demise, but I have to believe it had something to do with, you know, there was just too much debauchery and cops found out. Some arrests were made, you know, some people got in trouble, and it was just the end of it. You know, some metalheads moved in upstairs and actually purchased the building, and really didn't understand what was going on, you know. So it unfortunately fizzled out.
Well, once in a while we would have trouble with cops. If
Yeah.
they had nothing else to do, they usually were occupied with other stuff around here. But,
Obviously.
you know, once every 6 months, maybe once a year, they would come in and, you know, we let people bring alcohol and drink on their own, which is kind of a gray area.
Let people bring a lot more than alcohol.
Oh, and other stuff too. We didn't know about that, but yeah. But once in a while, you know, once they came in and ticketed everyone, whoever had an open bottle of beer, which sucked. Once or twice we had to go to court for stuff. I went to jail once for noise violation. That was, we were too loud, neighbors complained.
I was here for that.
Yeah.
Gee, what show was that?
That
was your show.
One of mine.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Bastard Noise.
Bastard Noise, yeah,
Bastard
yeah.
colon, Goat. A ton of us.
Yeah, it was one
That
of
was.
Because I remember they took up a collection to go get you out of the pokey.
Yeah, I was only in there overnight.
Yeah. I think Steve went and got you, didn't he?
No, no, everyone else tried.
I went all the way downtown.
My mom came and actually got me out.
The demise of Speaking Tongues is that of legend and mystery. It's people moved in upstairs, didn't like what they were hearing downstairs, thought, well, we're going to turn this into a rock hall. We're going to turn this into the next Agora for crackheads. And basically would pull the plug on any show that was cool. And if it sounded, you know, if it had a name that you couldn't read, like death metal name you couldn't read, they would book that. Then it got to a point if it was those hardcore kids that looked like they were picking up change, they would book that. And then they would call the cops, police on us. And I had one incident where they did call police on us, and I locked the door so all my friends would stop drinking who were underage. And when I opened the door, Cleveland's finest searched me. And luckily, I was smart enough to take the switchblade I was holding out of my pants prior to. And I did not get in trouble, but as mentioned before, Ralf Hausman did get in trouble, which led a lot to the demise of Speaking Tongues, which to this day kind of pisses me off.
The years that followed the demise of Speaking Tongues were marked by long periods of inactivity for much of the old guard, who were essentially left without a home for their art and music. It was during this time, however, that a younger crowd took notice of post-industrial sound art and began to record, promote, and release music with a renewed DIY spirit that updated the sounds and styles of the traditional industrial scene. Their efforts would eventually catch the attention of the older members of the scene and would bring many back into the fold.
When I do Skin Graft, I use it mainly as an outlet for anger and depression. And, it's a lot of ways that you can't express yourself in day-to-day life. You can't go beating the shit out of anyone that gives you trouble. So I make music so that I can stay a cool guy on the outside, because I'm seething with rage on the inside. It's not possible to let that out any other way. Stay out of jail.
everything here in this scene, it seemed in the early 2000s or the late 90s, there was a lot of post-rock and post-punk going on. And I just wanted something different from that. I started my noise band Jerk. We didn't even know what the heck we were doing. In like 2001 was when we first started. And I think it was just an influence of going in a different direction from everything that we were hearing. And there was a lot about the city too, the aesthetic of it, kinds of things that appealed to me artistically with the city, with the industry. It also kind of, shaped it with the environment, but it was kind of a reactionary thing for me. And then I found other people who were doing daisy-chained effects, and hell if I'd ever seen that before. And that was really inspiring to see people working with texture, and texture and rhythm became interesting, and that kind of led into something that got connected down in Akron with Diamond Shiners and the Tusco Terror guys. And when I saw that, things started to change. I met Wyatt Howland, and then we started making radically different music. And a lot of it was reactionary, and a lot of it was making something to represent those who wear all black.
I got into industrial around 98. A buddy of mine gave me a copy of Throbbing Gristle's second annual report. Changed everything for me. Later on, went to Cleveland and saw XTerminal and Blockweld, and that pretty much set my life to, and decided to devote my whole life to industrial noise. First, really into hardcore when I was little for a while, and then that was basically the gateway, just finding something more angry, more pissed off, and it was just like the perfect gateway. It was like noise and industrial and power electronics, and I've just been, I don't know, got really into that.
When we first moved here, we tried to hook up with the punk rock scene because we always listened to a lot of punk rock stuff, and we felt like that was where the artistic element was, and also the very dirty, raw, fucked up stuff, And when we moved to Cleveland, there was just a lot of retrograde, heroin, 70s, heartbreakers kind of dudes trying to live in the past, and they thought that our stuff was too artsy or whatever. And so, it was kind of frustrating at first, but we just started playing these open mic nights at the Rockwood, and we met Kat and Jeff and Ryan and Brian in Thursday Club, and So those guys were doing pretty abstract, weird stuff too.
Wyatt Hallen, his main project's named Skin Graft, he started booking noise nights and experimental nights at a club that's now defunct called Capsule in 04-05 time period. And Ryan Keene was very active here at WCSB. He was our music director and has been a noise guy for a long time. So I think they sort of spearheaded this latest push in having these kind of shows and showcases. George Vibrans, who used to be called Steve Dracula, and now he's Pimlo, he started booking more experimental type shows at DIY Spaces and Capsule and whatnot. And also at the same time in Akron, the Tusco Terror guys were starting to do their thing at a place called the Diamond Shiner's House. And that was separate from the Cleveland scene, but suddenly, you know, people are like, hey, wait, there's Akron people are doing some stuff. So then the Tusco Terror guys joined in, and it just has just like blossomed from there.
Yeah, I used to book gigs when there wasn't very many people booking gigs for noise and industrial, so it was a needed thing. I didn't really want to do it, but me and my sister Amanda were booking a lot of these gigs, and there were the idea was to get things rolling, put people together that didn't usually play together, find new artists. But I stopped doing it about a year ago because I'm not really that good at it. I'm not too good at promotion or organizing shows. So now a lot of people have stepped up to fill that space. So I don't do it anymore for that reason.
It took a year or two to really figure out the kind of freedom that's possible. And so I think at that time, in the early 90s, Sonic Youth and Nirvana, you know, those kinds of bands just really blurred the lines enough so that we could do whatever we wanted to do.
I originally started getting into noise from various influences from the metal community and my exposure to early relapse titles, Merzbow, Masona. Started making cassette decompositions in my living room just for my own amusement, and then my friend Steve Makita from the project Lockweld and Apartment 213 and the family chapter pretty much dragged me kicking and screaming into the live arena, and I've been playing out pretty regularly about a year and a half, 2 years or so now.
I got really bored with everything I was hearing on the radio. I got tired of rock music in particular. Pop music's great, but you hear kind of the same song over and over again, and I just started really yearning for things that were different and unusual that would engage my mind and my imagination and my intellect. And I began hearing things in Cleveland. I had a little change of my lifestyle and switched gears career-wise and that kind of a thing, and had more time to hang out and started exploring the music scene here, and came upon people like Bob Drake, whose project's Flux Monkey, who was performing along with a small group of other people who were starting to put on these unusual and strange and harsh and difficult to take shows.
I originally got involved in extreme music when I first moved up here when I was 15 years old. I'd been raised in an extremely religious household by my mother, and my father was a bit more lenient and open-minded and wanted me to have something that I enjoyed. Unfortunately for him, 15 years of being pent up led to me enjoying very aggressive, angry music. So I immediately sort of stumbled upon the hardcore scene and fell in love, to be completely honest, with the entire scope of what it is to make hardcore and punk music, which led me to noise, because Cleveland has a very unique sort of intertwined history between the noise scene and the hardcore scene, with bands like Integrity and Apartment 213 doing projects such as Psy Warfare and Lockweld. And I had some minimal exposure to noise at that time, and it kind of resonated with me because it was just absurdly aggressive to the point where there was no form.
Back in the late 70s, the people had become completely disgusted and disillusioned with the state of music at the time, and how everything had become all pompous and overblown with big rock concerts and you know, the difference between the performers and the audience. There was this huge, you know, they were placed on a platform, and which I think is a good thing, but to a certain extent. But it was about the time that there was all the whole punk scene started happening, and a lot of different stuff started coming out. People wanted something different, and it was more possible at that time to do something different, and people were more open and accepting to that.
Armageddon came early to Cleveland. Here, the old gods of industry and the new gods of technology would not reconcile with one another. Their arrogance only ensured neither of the expansion both so desperately craved to survive. Caught in the midst of their stalemate, us mortals were left to scrape out an increasingly marginal existence. However, disenfranchisement also leads to disillusion. Freed from the bonds of obscured destinies, our embittered vision gives birth to beasts unbridled by civility.
I'm involved with a bar now called Now That's Class. It's a business, but we do all kind of shows there too. And all to get people that are involved there, at least the older people, I know from back in the days here. So it's kind of continuing in a little bit different way, but we're still doing stuff. Steve's still doing shows. He did his first noise shows here and stuff. He's doing AVB now, which is kind of similar to what he did back then. Always had somewhat of my talent. It was always kind of somewhat of a local scene. It's probably now is bigger than ever as far as experimental and that kind of stuff.
I came up with this title, Audio-Visual Baptism, because it's audio, it's visual, and you're going to get baptized.
AVB Collective is really central to a lot of what I've done as a noise musician in Cleveland. I was lucky enough to fit right in with the general mood and atmosphere of a lot of those performances and performers.
I wanted to put something together that were monthly in number, 1, 2, 3, 4, and to me, doing that takes people that are in their house recording cool records and stuff that no one will ever hear, cassettes, CDRs, no one will ever hear, and it's basically just a party for our friends to come out and go, hey man, I just recorded this and this is what it sounds like live. And there's no door price. You can bring your own drinks, or if we do them at Now That's Class, where we're standing right next to, they'll charge you for drinks. And but I don't like to charge. We usually do them on a Sunday, that way no one loses their ass when they, hey, we didn't make any money. Well, it's not a Saturday, who cares, you're normally closed. Or, there's a football game or something going on, and who cares? And then I also like it when it's like that, because then everybody will just walk in off the street and get a taste of what we do, whether they like it or not. And I really hope they hate it. That's why I love that. I really like when people dislike what they hear, because what happens is you dislike it, and 5 days later you're like, man, let's go back to that place because that really sucked. And then you go back, and then a week later we have a new friend.
it's been an incredible flagship for the Cleveland experimental community. It demands participation, and it is sustained by participation. And in doing so, it becomes incredibly open to individuals such as myself, who had no real if you will, as far as the noise scene goes. I was given an opportunity to perform. I was able to make new friends, meet like-minded individuals who shared my interests, and met plenty of people who didn't share my interests. But I think without the audiovisual baptism, there would be, I don't think Cleveland would be as productive or prolific, if you will, in our output, because I think that the kind of misery that we openly express in Cleveland, we do so because we feel, oddly enough, we feel a sense of community in our isolation. We feel like we have a forum to express our frustrations, whereas most cities in the United States, and I'd imagine in the rest of the world, most noise communities don't have that kind of regular, ongoing forum to express themselves in. And it also it challenges us as individuals.
We get a lot of good touring bands through here. It wasn't always like that, you know. Like, a lot of people didn't really want to come through here because not that many people would come out to the shows, and I feel like it really started to get bigger when Steve started doing audiovisual baptism, and then I started helping him out with that and booking shows myself, and I just feel like we got a really good scene here.
happy that, you know, the AVBs are going on. It gives everybody something to do. It opened up the door for us. You know, they had an all-female AVB, and we were invited to go play, and so we did, and that's what got us here. So it's definitely good times. The people are really friendly and open and, you know, willing to help you, and, you know, everybody's really positive and supportive. And
I think anything with creativity involved is important, right, and I respect it.
see a lot of gatherings have a lot of positive influence on people. It brings people together a lot. People who normally just kind of be on the outside of society or musical genres. You constantly come back and you see things you didn't catch before. It's always amorphous, where someone will do a performance one way one night, it'll be different the next time you catch them. I mean, I've seen people have awful nights in their own opinion, but in my opinion, they just completely destroyed everything because it was fantastic. So seeing that over and over and over, like on a monthly or a weekly basis, it's good for community, because outside of, at least outside of Cleveland, Ohio, I can't think of many places where this sort of thing is almost a lifestyle.
Even if it's not audiovisual baptism, I hope that people find something, whether it's official or unofficial, that they can rally around in that kind of collective atmosphere, because, you know, I feel like that's one of the most crucial things that anyone can have.
This is our past, our present, and our future. The shadows that smokestacks cast upon the weed-infested concrete, our sundial counting down the hours till doomsday. We see the tendrils of decay strangling the life out of our existence. We see it in the snaking oil stains that mar the surface of the river that winds through our city. We see it in the shattered glass, peeling paint, and rotting boards covering the windows of our decommissioned factories. We smell it in the stench that rises off the poisonous lake lying on our eroded northern shore. We hear it in the far-off wail of police sirens and the sad cries of gulls picking through the trash. We make our living trying to salvage purpose from the wreckage of this failed industrial experiment. We find a way to escape through creative outlets, the one thing not choked on the malaise, but rather thriving. We commune in ashes, like refugees huddling around a fire. We embrace the decay surrounding us as a means of expression.
So we're out here on an August day. It's actually kind of nice, not as humid as usual. Here in our depressing city of Cleveland. To the left of me, Section 8 housing. Behind me used to be a thriving steel mills, salt mines. They're still salt mines, but they're not anything what they used to be. This river used to be booming, industry flourishing. So basically, it's all rotted out, and that's where we come in. We make the sounds you're hearing behind me.
Living in the ghetto is endless supply of inspiration for the kind of stuff we do. It's just terrific. So dark and grimy and shitty, and police are everywhere. Everyone is dirt poor. Everyone is leech, scummy town, this Cleveland. It's perfect.
I think the music that's coming out of Cleveland, as far as experimental music goes, and especially in particular noise music, it is a perfect representation of our immediate surroundings.
Cleveland is mired in bad economy, no money, no jobs really. It's very hard. There's a lot of talented people here, and a lot of well-educated people and skilled people, but there's not enough jobs to go around, so people make do. Now, how that plays into the burgeoning underground experimental music scene is that it's the perfect breeding ground for this kind of creativity, particularly of this ilk, because there's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of feelings of injustice. There's a lot of, we don't have any money, so we're going to do whatever we can with what we have.
I see a very, very definite connection between the atmosphere and environment surrounding, post-industrial Cleveland and the music coming out of it. Whether or not the artists intend to that, an equal part of the importance of music kind of hinges on the audience's perception. And I know personally that when I listen to acts playing in Cleveland, I always can see, pictures of a city and pictures of a lifestyle that is just on its way out, and broken down and miserable. I just see that whenever I hear that kind of music.
myself, I've lived kind of all over northeastern Ohio, and it seems like it's either desolate and absolutely nothing to do, or, you know, looking over your shoulder everywhere you go. You know, like you drive into Cleveland and you see the Rock Hall and the Science Center and everything looks beautiful, and you get in the valley though, you get underneath there and it's just shit. It's total shit.
I don't know if I can speak for others, but the city of Cleveland is the biggest influence in what I do. Major cities are the influence, but this is the only city I've known for 38 years.
Cleveland's pretty much a dying Midwestern town, and it's got like a post-industrial vibe to it in general, so there's a bleakness to it that kind of rubs off on me personally, and I know other artists have spoken about stuff like that as well. As far as other people around me, I can't really say, because industrial and noise is so personal that I can't claim to be in someone else's head and know what's focusing them or driving them to do what they do. And personally, for me, it's bringing forth just what I hear in my head from my day-to-day life.
Living in Cleveland and bearing witness to what Cleveland is has an incredible influence on the kind of music that I create. When you look at Cleveland, when you look right out here, you see the future of techno-industrial society as a whole. It's a cascading failure. You know, I'm sure other people in this documentary are going to say like the economy's in the shitter. We have numerous social issues that are just coming to a head, and the entire city, and really the entire region, feels like it's coming to this boiling point where it's just about to explode. And I would say that that is not just the fate of Cleveland, that's the fate of 7 billion people on this planet. And, you know, I look out, you know, I can look out my front door and see that. You see these, you know, this was once a great industry and now it has collapsed. And the further you go back, it's starting to be reclaimed by this planet. And I think that's a fitting sort of, it's not a metaphor, it's a very fitting microcosmic image for what is happening on a grander scale every day.
It's like when I lived overseas, I would notice, like as an observer, I would notice that like there was a lot of, like in Seattle there was a certain kind of music, then like in LA there was, then Florida had a lot of death metal, and then I noticed that Cleveland, I noticed that they had like a lot of industrial, and I didn't understand first it why. But then when I came back here and just saw my surroundings, it was almost like inevitable that they would produce industrial music. You know, just like the landscape, I think it is influential. You know, just the fact that industry, a lot of people, like they just came from, that's how they made their living, from just living in an industrial environment. They're just surrounded by toxicity all the time.
In every band that I'm in, the city brings it out of me. All my hostility is from Cleveland. It's hurry up and stop attitude. We're gonna almost do that. We didn't do it. Everybody in this town, they're all cool. They're all friends of mine, but they're just blue collar workers, and they're trying to make the best of a bad situation.
Well, I think the environment probably affects that we're all brought up in and live in, affects us all pretty differently. You know, I grew up on a farm, and you know, so as far as like the environment affecting my music, the environment I grew up in affecting my music, you know, it definitely, you know, in the early, I definitely have come around to more, you know, really loving the sound of machinery, and you know, it probably stems from, you know, baling hay with my grandpa and listening to his tractors outside all the time, you know. You know, I guess, you know, you can look at you know, friends of ours, you know, growing up around Detroit and seeing, you know, the decaying buildings and stuff. I don't think any of us really took that as like, you know, we're gonna, you know, represent our home by making this dark music. I think it just kind of came out.
Tapped into like an inner rage that I had. I think one of the things that binds all of us together here is this inner rage. It could be politically oriented, it could be a rage against injustice, it could be personal things that happen to somebody and they just need to get it out, but it seems like there's a lot of righteous anger that a lot of folks were beginning to express.
I like the gutted out factories that we have because, like I said, I'm a blue collar worker, I'm a machinist, and the sound of nothing's better than the sound of a quality machine or a disturbed machine or a machine that's on its last leg. So that's what influences me on everything.
Akron's just like Cleveland, just as broke and just as desolate.
Right. Melancholy.
Melancholy. Yeah. And I think everybody just to get past all that, you know, let's pick up some synthesizers and stick them into some distortion pedals and get some of that angst out, you know.
Kind of reflection of what you're looking at.
Concrete makes the soul, you know.
You know, I guess it's life here also dictates the kind of music you make, and there's a lot of living here that's really hard. There's a lot that's good, but there's a lot that's really difficult about this region with the economy here, with the deterioration I've seen since I was a child. I grew up in Lorraine, which is also another industry town, just like Cleveland, where most of the industry left. And just kind of things are a little desolate here. I feel the same with the Michigan noise scene. It is kind of informed by the desperation of the community.
Personally, the influence of the surroundings of the city of Cleveland are a very big influence on me. I earned my money in my ability to do this as a machinist, working in a scummy place, surrounded by scummy people, and I live in a neighborhood that's, you know, pretty questionable from safety perspective as far as crime. It's pretty much the only place I've ever worked or lived, so I think that definitely shines through in the unease of the music that I play.
Cleveland has a lot to do with the music we make. Just shitty, grimy, depressing, just, yeah, super depressing.
That we don't live in a pristine city allows us to sort of break through that plastic facade and explore, like I'd say, grittier sounds. You listen to what comes out of this area, and most everyone will say it's bleak, it's gritty, it's raw, it's scummy, it's gutter noise, scumtronics, whatever you want to call it. And you look at other areas of the country, areas where they don't face the rapid industrial decay that we have, and their sounds are plasticky, they're glitchy, they're more in line with what I would imagine a technological society would approve of in looking at extreme music. Whereas, like I said, when you look at Cleveland, you have this rawness and this bleakness that sort of just spits in the face of its own environment.
There are a couple people I've worked with who are definitely like heavily influenced by the general atmosphere around this area, and a lot of the bad stuff, and it being sort of a Rust Belt manufacturing town. Sometimes the anger comes through.
It's dire here. Everybody's broke. It's basically Flint, Michigan with a paint job. And living here is really detrimental to your health. I saw a shirt one day that said, "You have to be tough to live in Cleveland." That's an understatement. You have to be a maniac to live here.
Yeah, there's things that are definitively Cleveland, and there always has been this kind of industrial feel here. Even though, like, from my experience of it, it started off with 9 Inch Nails, things like that. But what does that get? Where does that kind of mentality come from? I guess it's the architecture, the landscape is a big thing for me. I've always been influenced heavily by architecture in my work. Just the darkness of the city, the grime of it. There's just something about it that just kind of has this darkness to it, this darker quality to it. If you look for it.
Cleveland's pretty much dead center in the middle of the Rust Belt. There's nothing cool here, so we all do it just because we love it. It's not like a large metropolis city where there's a huge giant hipster factor. I really haven't encountered any so-called posers so far. Other places far away, I've talked to people online, and this kind of scene doesn't exist in places like Greece. They're dying for it over there. They can see like a big name act like Wolf Eyes maybe at a festival, but that's the best they'll ever get. Or maybe like a rock band like Sonic Youth or something. But as for like a weekly showcase gigs or monthly noise throwdowns, it just doesn't happen other places. You get small little DIY spots that do stuff here and there.
would say that one thing that would make Cleveland unique is that we have sort of actualized our perceptions of our environment through our art. We do take, there's often, a reactionary element to it. We are reacting not just to our environment itself, but to a mainstream perception of the environment. But for the most part, I think what really helps define Cleveland, as far as our community goes, is that we've foregone any sort of pretension that's been placed, and we've said this is it. We live in the ruins. We're here.
Perhaps more so than any other scene in Northeast Ohio, the industrial and noise scene is noted for its diversity and acceptance of crossovers. Shows regularly feature performances from bands that fall in with hardcore punk, doom metal, synth music, and jazz, which is uncommon in most of their respective scenes. What does seem to be the linking factor is the pervasive DIY influence that these acts seem to embody.
I just played in some grindcore bands when I was a kid. When I was 18, I was in Slum Scum, and then I wasn't in another grind band until Fascist Insect, and then my one friend got me into like Daughters, Curl Up and Die, and just like newer grindcore, and then we would check out bands like Clan of the Cave Beer online, and then Jerk, and then we saw Jerk were playing at May Halls. It was in March 07, so I went to see that, and it was Flat Can Company, Jerk, Dead Peasant Insurance, Clan of the Cave Beer, and then I just saw Dead Peasant Insurance, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I never saw anything like it. Like, I just considered it like sludge noise. Like, I already knew that there was some sludge noise, like White Mice, and they reminded me of Sonic Youth mixed with Acid King, Boris, Perry Ubu, and Throbbing Gristle with female vocals. And I just, at the time, like, I booked more punk bands on shows, and I couldn't do anything with bands like that, and I liked Jerk a lot as well, so I would write back and forth with David Russell, and then I got deployed to Iraq in 08, and I came back and I wrote to Dead Peasant Insurance, and we were reforming FI, or becoming active again, and I was like, are you guys planning to play a lot of shows this year, i.e. 09? And they were like, yeah, we'll play. So I just started going to their shows again, and then booking them, and we played together for the first time May 23rd with The Great Flood at Bella Dubby. extent of like noise, grindcore, power electronics, power violence crossover was, but it's like when you do a show that has power electronics, grindcore, doom, punk, like they're all being extreme but in a different way. So like it's touching on different facets of extremity. Like each band is extreme in its own way. Like with Fascist Insect, like we don't care what we're generalized are. We just want to be as extreme as we humanly can in the context or the framework that we're doing. So right now we're doing it in the context of grindcore, you know, to use a loose term. But in the future we might want to go out even further. We might go noisecore. We might go you know, we'll just change it up. We've already changed it up before. But the important thing is just the common denominator between all those bands is extremity. Like they're just pushing the limits. They're just trying to make something that's out there and unprecedented, and just they want to top themselves each time. Each time they play, they want to do something that's more out there and innovative than the last time.
I think there's a giant correlation between all extreme music. Attitude. Attitude is the number one thing. If you have an attitude of this is my art, this is what I want to do, and if people get pissed off by it, then I'm probably doing something right.
When I was growing up in the 90s, like I knew about bands like Incapacitants, Starstreakers, like Japanese Noise, like World, Melt Banana. I knew about that, but I didn't connect it all. And then just Bella W, that Scott Hosner from Bella W, like him, Murderous Vision, like they were responsible for just like reviving Fascist Insect, you know, playing out. And I just became friends with them. I kept going to the shows, and I became friends with Wyatt and Amanda from Dead Peasant Insurance.
And it goes back pretty far. I'm sure that there would be something that I'm missing, but you know, you had Suicide, who were an influence to Ministry, and possibly somewhere around there, industrial may have started to mix with, say, something more rock and roll or metal. That would be my guess.
See, with me, it was just a ladder, you know, looking for the next extreme thing, you know, and you know, it starts off new wave, and then you start listening to punk rock, and then hardcore, and then thrash, and then death metal, and then grindcore, and then what's after grindcore, you know. And I think you have to have an appreciation for all the previous before you get to this, what we do now, you know. And I think it all ties in together, if that's what you're going with, maybe. Yes.
Yeah. I think like extreme metal and this genre now it creates a sense of unease, which I always kind of dug. So I kind of got into that.
I mean, it's in everything now, because a lot of bands are starting to use noise samples and, you know, weird intros, you know, a lot of noisy stuff, and you know, and it ties in with the, you know, go back to the Germs, you know. I mean, the Germs were a noisy band, and you know, God, that was what, 79 to 83 when they reigned supreme and everything like that. But it's always been around, yeah. I mean, I've, you know, even in the grindcore scene, it kind of, that was a good stepping stone off into this genre and stuff. So.
Yeah. It's just naturally anarchist in structure. And people meet, people come together every week, every month, you go to different cities. And when I go to, I don't know, like to support a friend or something, go to a rock and roll show, you know. It's like all these bands, they come in, they go, they play for 45 minutes, they don't even know what the other bands are doing, and then they leave. But with us, you know, people play like 10, 20-minute sets, and it's just this constant fluidity, constant movement. And, you know, it's very supportive. And the thing is, with this kind of art, because of the short sets and the regular sets and the abstraction and the ability to appreciate when things go wrong and just move with that kind of change, I mean, there's just this artistic vitality and also this camaraderie that is just it's unparalleled, and it's something that I think humans have a real craving for.
We have found our homes in the hovels that have long been abandoned. Where those who came before could not gather, we hold our service. Where they could not see, we make our art. Where they could not listen, we make our sound. We have built opera houses in musty basements and dilapidated churches. Our scavenger choir howls with vengeful pleasure, for we have flourished in the fallout.
Good evening and welcome to the mysterious Black Box. We're going to start things off tonight with some Prince Rama of Ayodhya. They'll be playing in Cleveland Monday. There were so many good local bands, so many people doing things in their basements basically, and would just get together and jam at some coffee shop or something like that. It was very rarely ever in an established venue or for any kind of payment or anything. And I really felt like not just Cleveland, but also the whole Midwest. There's a lot of really good experimental bands that had sort of started back in that 04, 05, 06 time frame. I got the show 3 years ago, so it was 07 when I first started having the show. And one of my main goals was to, every week, try to play local musicians' material, because there's masses and masses of releases that are coming out of Cleveland right now.
One of the most subversive things you can do on modern radio is to give somebody something completely unlistenable, like to a normal mainstream audience. And there's, Cleveland's lucky enough to have, 4 or 5 people that are radicals enough to kind of push this noise agenda, if you will, to get this stuff out there, to be heard by the mainstream public, and to reaffirm what everybody who's in the know already knows.
I wanted to really start, I don't want to call it promoting because that sounds like some business thing, but I really wanted to start exposing Cleveland listeners to what is going on that they'll never read about in the newspapers or seen or anything like that. And nobody would know what a band like Murderous Vision would sound like, or what Skin Graft would sound like, or any of these other ones, even the jazz improv like the Week Orchestra, that kind of a thing. So I thought it was very important to play music from upcoming shows every week, which, as you know, that's one of my parts of my format. And so that folks can sort of get an idea of what's coming, because before I had a show, I used to tune in to certain people's shows because I knew they would play stuff. I'd see a show listing that looked really interesting, and I'm like, I wonder what that's all about. And then I would hear it on college radio, and that would make me want to go to the show. So I thought that I could help with that. I could help kind of promote, I guess, if you want, just expose people to what's happening so they can decide for themselves if they want to get involved. Seems to be effective.
any social group, any social clique, any sort of community is going to operate on several different levels. There's going to be what actually occurs within the community, what it tells itself is happening in the community, and what it presents itself as to outsiders. So I think that when you have smaller communal groups, when you have smaller scenes, if you will, being able to control our own media is vital, because what happens, and this happens not just in music or anything, it happens on all levels, is that the dominant groups, the dominant social organizations will begin to dictate how all other groups are perceived and how other groups behave. So by being able to have a sustainable do-it-yourself ethos, it allows us to subtly resist that kind of assimilation.
That you had to recognize the need for kind of self-generated media content for these kind of scenes to have. I mean, look at the hardcore scene and like the grindcore scene, scenes that weren't really, getting a whole lot of exposure because their stuff at the time where it was really popular or like really new and groundbreaking was, it was too much for a lot of like commercial mainstream things to cover without any idea of like, without any restriction on saying, look, this is a novelty. And I think what's important is that once a scene develops, people within that scene are going to want to kind of strip the novelty away from the coverage that it gets, and they're going to want to do their own media coverage of these things.
I think it's incredibly important for people to take matters in their own hands, whether it's running a label, organizing a show space, any number of things, because industrial civilization has conditioned us to seize our agency in every aspect of our lives. We were told that we aren't good enough to make the decisions that govern our lives, and something as small as choosing what music you're going to put out, or being able to get your friends together to put on a social event, that can be rewarding in and of itself. That can fill you with a sense of self-determination, which we are all too often deprived of.
I personally feel that having supportive venues are important, but it's also very easy to have a show in someone's basement or someone's barn, like we just did recently. Definitely the music takes priority, but it's nice to be able to play somewhere, especially like Now That's Class. Having Ralf do sound is great.
Venues that support noise and industrial are good, but at the same time, they're not necessarily necessary. Because if there's no venues, people will just resort to having house shows, whether in their basements, their living rooms. They'll just continue. But we're lucky here where we have places like Now That's Class, or Bella W Coffee House, or this church that is now a show venue, that support this, and they have occupants and promoters and owners that are sympathetic to our cause. So that's a beautiful thing, because being able to plug in and rage out of a club's PA, it's what I live for. I know a lot of people do. So without them, we'd be screwed.
Because the live aspect of a performance is something that really kind of it's something that really kind of draws a lot of people together and allows them to share ideas through performance and through communal kind of gathering and stuff. And to bring people from outside of your scene into that scene, it's almost like showing people instead of having to tell people all the time, and that's important, I think, because people learn a lot from what they experience and what they see and hear and feel.
think unlike mainstream music where the structure and the songwriting sort of leaves the visual aspect lacking, I think in contrast to that, with noise being so formless, if you will, there's an incredible emphasis put on the visual element that goes along with it, and I think that it really does play a crucial role. I know for myself, oftentimes when I'm recording, it's often after I've seen something or I've just focused on a single image even that really evokes a certain emotion or a sort of state for me. I recorded a tape called Forced Hand, which I recorded after looking at images of a burnt out vivisection lab. I'd been looking at these images of what some activists had done, and I kept thinking about the kind of empowerment that they must have felt when lighting those labs up. And so, I went and recorded the tape, and then when it came time to do the artwork, it was an easy choice. I found a picture of one of those labs and the burnt out shell of the office that they had attacked, and I put that on the cover.
I do a lot of that stuff as hobbies, like painting, drawing, all kinds of whatever, I feel like doing at the time. So I think that it lends to it, and it adds to it, and it creates, a whole. But, it's not 100%, necessary or anything. But I think it definitely helps.
Yeah. It is, cool to have a good visual to go with what you're listening to, or, if you're fortunate enough to have, a screen behind you to play something, or...
Because in my mind, it takes the people watching or the people listening to where the creator was in their mind.
Yeah.
So.
Part of the journey.
Well, I just basically that's the only thing that fits the music that all of us are doing right now. Just like we use photocopied art and stuff like that on the label because it matches what we're doing. It's just scummy. I mean, it's just like really shitty noise and industrial music, and I don't know, I think it's pretty important because it says a lot about the city too. Like when people see stuff like from our label, like out of Cleveland and stuff, like they immediately associate it with Cleveland. So, I mean, when out-of-towners come here, like the first thing they smell is shit, and then like if you go downtown Warehouse District, all there is fucking shitty abandoned warehouses and buildings.
When I started doing tapes, it was like the early 90s, right before tapes just kind of died, and I just still love them. CDs just kind of have always seemed a bit disposable to me, especially these days, but it is nice to have a CD that you can get the full, clear, perfect sound. You can't get that with a tape. You can't get that with a record. So I do see them. I kind of see them as like a final archival medium, which is why I reissued things on CD, even though I personally don't listen to CDs that often. It is nice to have that final document of that's exactly how the artist recorded it.
Analog tape is the perfect medium for releasing music because it's immediate. You can record something and you can release it the next day. The sound can be really crusty and has a real dark, low fidelity sound to it, which I'm really into. The scummy aspects of music.
rather enjoy running my own label because I'm able to dictate the terms on which my vision is presented, I suppose we should say. Even mid-range independent labels that have distribution through major corporations have to make tremendous amounts of compromise when it comes to presentation. I don't have to worry about that. It's entirely up to me what I will and will not do. And it also allows me to avoid the politics of running a label. If I don't want to release someone's stuff, I don't have to. I have turned people away because I felt uncomfortable with either the subject matter, the quality of the material, a number of things, and it allowed me to, it allows me to, like I said, dictate those terms. I find it incredibly crucial and important for small communities, whether it be in extreme noise music, hardcore punk, anything really. I do believe that bringing things into your own hands is vital.
I started a label because I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to give my take on other people's music, and that was part of the joy of it, was being excited by somebody else and then being able to design something that looks like that. I really try to have a consistency of design aesthetic, although I have different things that I do when I do packaging, slide art or collage or drawing, and there's a lot of different ways you can go with things, but I try there to be some consistency. I try there to be some, for the art to have some real semblance to how I feel about that artist, and I've really enjoyed being a part of creating an aesthetic, representing the city not only as a musician but also visually. It's really important for me, and it's a real thrill that I do package design. There's a lot of influence that goes around with different people's aesthetics that kind of collectively does the same thing as, we all as musicians will influence each other and start playing differently because we're all together in the same community. You can do that too with everyone's tape labels or CD labels. Wyatt Howland's SKSK CDR label, very industrial looking label, really consistent, heavily influential on the way I was thinking about noise music when I got into noise music, and that was something that then led me down a direction to start packaging things a certain way.
Well, with my running of Live Bait Recording Foundation, I don't know exactly where it fits into the scheme of the greater whole, but personally where it fits into me is I've been able to release my own material, which is obviously quite important to me, but also on the other aspect, back when things were a little better for me financially, I was able to bring some records that I felt were really important to the greater whole and the greater scene.
I don't see running a label or performing so much as an act of resistance as I do sort of a staking of one's own territory. Resistance requires an offensive tactic. I offer none. I support many various offensive tactics taken by various political and social organizations, but for me, making noise music and being able to put out other people's releases is sort of a staking my own territory of saying this is mine.
And my mission, I guess, with Hanson Records is to, just find that weird farm kid like myself, looking through a Toxic Shock catalog, just, I guess I'm just taking the music I and stuff I like and trying to make it available for other people to check out. Really, I mean, it's pretty much simple as that.
if you see some guy running around with an angle grinder, like, you're probably gonna be paying attention to what's going on. So, dude, shit is getting hood over here today. I'm into it.